Hello, and my name is Peter Rushmer, and I'm your host today of a Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners and professionals just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we're here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. Just real, frank, and raw conversations. Welcome, I'm joined today by Andy Page, who is an ex-colleague of mine from my days at Volvo. Absolutely fantastic finance specialist, and a really great conversation we had around the future of transport, alternative fuels, and what the financing of those is going to look like. It's a great episode. I really hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please do share it so we can reach as many people as possible. Thank you. I am joined today by Andy Page, and Andy, I'm really pleased that you have come to join me on a Half Dozen Things podcast today. It's absolutely fantastic. Andy is a financial specialist, finance guru. In fact, our relationship dates back to when I was the top performing salesperson for Volvo trucks. And I just thought I'd get that dig in actually, because I did get a little bit of stick for a previous podcast I did from some of my previous Volvo colleagues about sales and from the sales team as well. So yeah, just wanted to get that dig in that I was definitely the top sales guy in the area, and no one could tell me. Obviously, I sold loads of great financial products as well. So absolutely fantastic. But yeah, off the back of a previous podcast with Darren Newman, who was an old Volvo colleague, who's now set up low carbon truck consultancy, we were talking about future technologies. We were talking about what alternative fuels will be about, and what's that going to look like. And that triggered a great conversation between Andy and I around what the finance is going to look like on those, and just how that landscape's going to change. So Andy, if you're able to just, I've waffled on a little bit. I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'm sure there's a question that I can find somewhere. But yeah, you introduce yourself and let people know who you are, mate.
Stop me anytime, Pete. It's great to speak to you again. It's great to speak to Rush. And you're dead right, mate. For about 1 minute, you were brilliant. As a salesman, you were brilliant, mate. You're brilliant. But no, it was great to hear you and Darren last week. Darren's a good friend. Obviously, we worked together in Volvo. And to be fair, mate, you know, Darren is somebody that I would turn to, and I have turned to talk about sort of alternative fuels and that kind of thing. He probably is one of the most knowledgeable people I'd say in the country, sort of outside of academia, if you like. So a really good guy to get on and to speak to. But you wanted to talk to me about finance, mate, didn't you?
I did.
And I remember those days, mate, when I used to come do those presentations. I used to say, right, guys, I've got about 15 spreadsheets to put up, and your little face would light up, and you. So no, don't worry, mate. Don't worry. No spreadsheets today, mate. No spreadsheets today. But did you get a bottle of wine? I can't remember. Just remind me.
Oh, I did once upon a time, mate.
Yes, once upon a time.
I was in the circle of trust that would get a wine. Yeah, I haven't had one for a little while though, Andy. Maybe I'm out of the circle of trust.
Just remember what I said, mate. Don't spill it on your woodwork. All right, that's all I'm going to say, mate. Don't spill it on your woodwork. Well, I have actually drawn a good conclusion, mate. Between anybody who's had my wine, I've not found anybody yet who's caught COVID. So.
There we go.
There's got to be something in that, mate, isn't it?
There we go. Did AstraZeneca come knocking for their vaccine?
They have, mate. I'm holding out. I've got a big deal going with the European Union, mate. Big deal.
Love that.
Big deal. Anyway, buddy, let me tell you about finance, because there's some things happening. There's some quite big changes going on. COVID-19 was obviously a global tragedy, but at the same stroke, it was a global innovator. And it's kind of sparked big movements in society in the way we think about things. And that includes finance. But to kind of help you kind of understand where we got to, if you don't mind, mate, I'll give you a tiny bit of a history lesson. That's all right.
Mate, I'm a curious guy who likes to learn. I'm up for that.
Now, you'll know, mate, in this country, we've had hundreds and hundreds of years of stability. Yeah. I mean, we've had no invasion since 1066. Generations of the same families have owned stuff, and things have been very static. In Europe, it's been different because they've had, invasions, wars, revolutions, all that kind of stuff. So they've had years of sort of assets changing hands and people, getting used to not owning stuff. But we've been very traditional in this country about owning stuff, and hire purchase has been a very traditional way of financing for us.
Hmm.
And if you look, take a couple of steps back, Second World War, quite a key event for finance, actually, because when all our forces came back after the war, the government of this country undertook a massive house building program and basically provided council housing. So that's one of the first times that you see sort of, the population being housed in decent housing that's rented. And then if you kind of skip forward to the 1980s, mate, now I think that's around about the time you were born, mate, but I was rocking the dance floor on the Empire Ballroom, Leicester Square, mate. I was throwing some shapes down there, and I started my finance career down there, mate. And this was the height of Thatcherism. And there's two key things that Thatcherism brought to finance, mate. First of which, they gave the right to buy. So you remember I just said about all these people that were given council houses?
Yep.
They were given the right to buy their homes at a very attractive rate. The second thing that the government did is they deregulated the banks. Now, that meant the banks, prior to that point in time, could only really lend up to the value of what they'd got in their safes and vaults. But, deregulation allowed them to lend way beyond that. So, banks went out and borrowed money from other banks and from overseas, from America, and basically went about providing mortgages for these people to buy these houses. So there's a massive boom in mortgages in the 80s. And then in the 90s,
all those poor people getting born around that time that would then in the future struggle to get on the housing market.
I know, exactly. Yeah, we'll come on to that, mate. But okay. you click on to the 90s, mate, when you started school.
Yep.
That's it. I was rocking the Happy Mondays and the Hacienda Club, mate.
I don't even know who that is. So yeah, happy days.
Exactly. With my glow sticks. But no, I mean, that was kind of like the next phase in financing, when you had a massive boom in sort of credit cards and store cards and overdrafts, and it just became sort of, the norm that people would have an overdraft, and it didn't matter what you bought as long as you bought it on debt, and debt just absolutely boomed, and it carried on booming until 2008.
Yeah.
You might kind of click into your head, mate, to do with finance, and that is, of course, the year of the big crash. And what had happened is debt had built up to such an extent that it just all collapsed, in like a house of cards. It all collapsed on top of its own weight. And in this country, we had a big car assembly and manufacturing sector.
Yes.
And one of the things the government did in 2008 is they stepped in to help that sector keep its jobs, keep employment, by providing a scrappage scheme. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the scrappage scheme turned out
to be $2,000 for a banger, wasn't it?
Absolutely right, mate. So if you pushed your Skoda Berlin Special Edition into local dealership, the old Skoda Berlin Special Edition, mate, it had a heated rear windscreen. Do you know why? Keeps your hands warm while you're pushing it.
Amazing. They come with heated steering wheels now, but yeah.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So you'd push your old Skoda in, bang right to your head, mate. And you'd see a nice, 3 Series BMW or something there for 20 grand. Like you said, the government would give you 2.5 grand. And, the balance to finance would probably give you a payment of about 500 quid a month. Right now, what the manufacturers did cleverly is they talked to their captive finance companies and they said, look, these cars, it's a great opportunity for us to sell cars, right? But it's looking a bit expensive. What can we do? And the finance company said, well, there's this old product that's been kicking around for ages called lease purchase, where basically what you do is you can scoop off some of the monthly payments you'd normally pay and put it to a lump sum at the back end. And therefore, you kind of, you have one lump sum at the front end, which is deposit, lump sum at the back end, which obviously you have to pay, but it brings down the payments in the meantime. So it bring down the price of your 3 Series BMW down to about, 350 quid or something, which is quite affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So car financing boomed. Yeah. And this was the birth of what we now know as PCP, personal contract purchase. Yeah. Now, what the manufacturers did quite cleverly is that they pushed up the value of the balloons.
Yep.
When customers start to say, oh, hang on a second, because that's a lot of money I've got to pay at the back end, is my car really going to be worth that much? Right? They said, oh, don't worry, because we'll give you a guaranteed future value. All right. So the consumer said, fantastic. I love this PCP. Right, my payments are about 300 quid. Got my new 3 Series. I'm off. Skim forward 36 months. And of course, their 3 Series has got this balloon, which stands at about 7 grand. Now, your consumer would say, well, all right, I could sell my car off the auto trader, get my money, cover me balloon. So he'd look in the auto trader, and sure enough, the car was worth 7 grand. So the consumer would think, well, hang on a second, this is a bit risky. If I don't get 7 grand from my car and can't pay my balloon, I'm in trouble. I'll go and see the dealer about that guaranteed future value thing. And of course, bingo. So the dealer's then got the customer on a hook, isn't he? Comes in, makes it nice and easy. And therein we see what's happened with car financing ever since, mate. It's gone like a 3-year cycle.
3-year cycle, aren't they?
Absolutely right, mate. Yeah, yeah. And you look at last year, mate, 2020, right? Car finance equated for £39 billion of lending.
Wow.
Right now, 75% of that was PCP.
Really, that's huge.
75%. So now that's a higher figure. Go on, mate.
Yeah, just a personal story on PCP. We've got a 7-seat Peugeot 5008.
Yeah.
Have you took it on PCP? Actually, when I left Volvo, because I didn't want the worry of a potentially unreliable vehicle. I didn't know what my financial situation would be, so I thought it'd be far better to just sort of spread. But we're at a point now where we need to remortgage, and I've got this balloon payment that's sat there on my credit file. So I've been speaking to them. I'm at 2.5 years, and I know what's going to. I want to give it back, and I'm just going to lease a vehicle, because then I've not got anything, and I can just lease. The business is at a place where I can lease it through the business. But the challenge is that I've now got a pesky sales guy who's going to be like, well, I can offer you this, and I'm like, I don't want this. But anyway, by the by, back to
you. Yeah. No, but I mean, you bang right, mate. I mean, the manufacturers have been very clever in a way, and this has kind of brought us up to date now in the certainly in the car market.
Yeah.
Predominantly, the way of financing is PCP. Like I said, 75% of car financing last year was PCP, so it's huge, and 39 billion quid, and that's greater, believe it or not, than the value of truck financing. Truck financing last year equated to about 27 billion quid. So it just goes to show you how big the car market is in this country.
Massive.
It is absolutely massive.
27 billion some market for the transport, for the truck sector, though, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the funny thing about the truck sector, mate, just talk about that for a minute, is you can kind of split the finance side of trucks into two, in that what's happened over the last kind of 10 years is that there's been a big growth in contract hire, what I call the traction sector, right? And you'd know as your tract unit boys, hauling containers out of Felixstowe or whatever, high mileage, not really bothered too much about the spec of the unit. They might be multi-shifting, so you've got different drivers jumping in and out. So they're not too bothered about. They don't really want to own the thing. They just want to thrash it to death and use it. And then after 3 years, they want to hand it back and get another one. So contract hire has worked really well in that sector. Elsewhere, if you're the kind of like your own account operator, or your haulier that your smaller haulier that kind of does a bit more general work, they're predominantly still sticking to hire purchase. The only thing with that, and you quite rightly made a point earlier, Pete, that the value of trucks obviously is only going one way, and that is up, and it's going up rapidly. To be fair, there's a lot of obviously emissions regulations, which obviously manufacturers have to comply with. So the kit's getting cleaner and cleaner. It's getting safer and safer. All the camera systems and all the automatic braking, all that kind of stuff that's going on there. So there's a lot going on to the truck, but the cap costs are going up to boot. Yeah. And the customers aren't really, in many ways, earning that much more. No. So contract hire is really starting to make an appearance in that sector as well, and I think is only going to grow as the assets become more expensive. Really, the only way that the smaller operators are going to be able to afford this kit is to lease it in some form. I think ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reduce sort of monthly, monthly expense, I suppose, and then sweat the asset, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just the other thing as well is some way of kind of like generally what's happening. I mentioned about changes in society earlier. driven partly by COVID. And you probably do it yourself, mate. I certainly did. Is that, when we all were sent home to work, I thought, bloody hell, I've got to find something to do. So we better get some of that Netflix, haven't we? So you get a subscription for your TV, don't you?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is you've got Prime as well. And then you got, Google Music and all the rest of it. And there's been a huge uptake in kind of subscription services. And particularly, I'll say the younger generation now, mate. Obviously, you're the younger generation, so you'll understand this, I know. But they've kind of grown up almost, kind of just accepting or seeing subscription or subscribing to stuff as being normal.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So a good example is I look up. I've got a bookshelf up there. I've got some books there, and I've got some books at the office. But actually, on my phone, I've got 20 books through Audible. But the issue is, I don't actually know what happens to that asset if I cancel my subscription to Audible. Do I lose it or not? I don't know. Maybe I do own it, but every month that payment goes out and I get a book in return.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't know about you, mate. One of the things I did at the start of COVID was have a big clear out because I'm at home, and you sort of suddenly realise you've got all this stuff around you, haven't you?
100%.
So the first thing I did, I got a big cupboard full of DVDs. I thought, well, just don't need them anymore because you got Amazon, you got Netflix.
My parents keep trying to offload DVDs on us. I haven't even got a DVD player. I haven't even got one.
Nor have I. That's gone. I've checked ours.
What about these CDs? Don't have a CD player, Dad. Don't have one.
Gone. That's it. Gone. Funny thing is, mate, I've got a cupboard full of vinyl.
Yeah, I own no music. Yeah, no, I own no music though. All of my music's on Amazon Music. I don't own any music.
But to be fair, Pete, why would you? For like $9.99 a month, you can download and listen to what you want.
Yeah,
aren't you? So there's been a huge shift, and at the same time, and just going back to housing, and again, you quite rightly mentioned earlier, mate, didn't you? That there's a lot of, again, the younger generation have got into renting property, and because of the way that rents have gone up, and again, way outstripped wages, that generation isn't saving enough for a deposit, so they've termed them generation rents because they believe that they will basically almost forever be renting a house. They're kind of trapped in that kind of cycle. So you've got a kind of generation of people coming up who are renting, subscribing. To them, ownership is kind of like a bit of an alien thing, which doesn't really kind of figure to them. So then when you come on to mobility, again, why would you HP something? There's quite a big thing sort of growing at about in multimodal transport.
Yep.
So, you might have say an own account transport company or a manufacturer that kind of starts off wanting a van, right? So they might have a van for 3 months, 6 months, then think, well, actually, business is growing, we need something a bit bigger.
Yeah.
So traditionally, if they'd entered into a 3-year finance, HP or something, they'd be stuck in it, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But you've got these subscription services now, like Wagon X. You've heard of Wagon X.
Yeah.
Wagon X, basically, you can enter into renting a van, and you just renew it every 3 months.
Yeah.
If after 3 months you think, do you know what, I do need a 7.5 tonner, right? You swap it straight in. Wagon X can provide you with a 3.5 tonner.
Yeah, awesome.
You might have it for 6 months and then go back to a van. Yeah. Or you might go up to a bigger rigid or whatever. And there's these companies out there now. And the same's happening for personal mobility with cars. So not wanting to tout Volvo, but Volvo have got this Care by Volvo, which is exactly the same thing. So again, I've
seen a few of these advertised on Facebook. So they're kind of like this subscription model. They look on the face of it quite expensive on a monthly basis at the moment, but I'm sure that'll become more competitive. But Land Rover do one, so you can have like 3 months in a Land Rover or a couple of weeks in a nice Volvo or something like that to impress your mates, I suppose.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah. I'm without a car at the moment, so I might give it a try. But anyway, with Volvo, you get 30 days effectively. It's like a demo.
Yeah.
So a demo, and then basically after up to 30 days, you can hand it back, no penalty. Obviously, there's return conditions. You can't smash it up, can you? But but you can effectively hand it back. Or once you get beyond your 30 days, they just automatically renew every 3 months. So again, you can sort of try it for 3 months. Think, do you know what? Actually, I fancy an XC60 or something, and you can swap it for a 60, or you can swap it down for a, whatever else.
Yep.
So there's all this stuff just starting to kind of bubble now, mate, and I can see this generation underneath now. That will be their natural kind of way of just financing stuff and funding stuff.
Yeah. So this is so timely because exactly the same situation. I had a new member of staff start, and I bought him a cheap van. Just like a cheap 2008 plate van, which I've bought and I've just bought for him. But it's had some issues and it's been a bit of a pain. So I've given him my leased. I had a leased Kia Picanto that I ran around in, one of these little ones. I'm not precious about what I drive. And I've given him that, and I was in a position where I can't really rely on this van anymore. And through one of my clients who have got access to some good lease vehicle deals, I've leased for 6 months a 1 Series BMW for 6 months. So it's going to come brand new. I can do 10,000 miles in it. I'm paying a weekly amount on a monthly basis, whatever it is. And actually, it's fairly cheap. No capital down, no nothing. Give it back after 6 months as long as I look after it. BM1 Series.
Yep. Well, I was reading about a platform the other day called Drover, and it's kind of exactly the same. It's the mobility version of Uber Eats. So you can go onto your Uber platform, can't you, your website, and you can order yourself McDonald's or whatever you want. Whatever. Now with Drover, you can go on there and do exactly the same thing for kind of any car or light commercial vehicle that you want. And basically, Drover act as an intermediary. So they'll go to the manufacturer and say, right, I got a car, I got a guy here who wants to rent a car like you said for 6 months. Can we give him an option from you? Can we give him an option from you? Or what can you do? And I can see this being quite a big piece. And it gives people flexibility, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right.
You never know what's coming either. I think people are much more. I think life is becoming a little bit more transient. I think people move around a bit more. I think that gig economy, people are less committed to workplaces environment, or that certainly there's a trend in that direction. And I think people want the lifestyle to be able to suit that flexibility.
Absolutely, mate. And you think it's quite good that you mentioned about sort of personal mobility in the job market, because you're bang right, mate. If you own a house in a particular place, you're pretty much stuck there, mate, aren't you?
Yeah.
If somebody says to you, look, we've got a fantastic job for you, can you start in Hong Kong next week? Well, you got a house, haven't you? What are you going to do with that? And if you're renting, you just give notice, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You leave and you go rent another place. You own a place, you got to sell it. If you're lucky enough to own a place. And a bit the same with mobility. I mean, going back to your point about it being expensive, it is expensive, but I think people see the convenience of it, mate, and I think that kind of outweighs a lot of the kind of like the negatives.
It frees capital. It frees capital up for other stuff as well, doesn't it? I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Because investments become much more accessible. So you see people, they may not necessarily have assets, but they might have stocks and shares on the old phone or what have you, which they probably wouldn't have done before because that money would be tied up in an asset like a vehicle, which is depreciating.
Yeah.
So
that's another very good point, Pete. They call it hyperconnectivity, right? That everybody's got one of these, and everybody nowadays. I don't know about you, mate, but obviously all my banking's done on here. Yeah. If I book anything, I generally do it on there. So, people expect their goods and services now to be accessible at the time they want it, and get it delivered to them at a time that suits them, like I said. So, I think there's a big move towards these online platforms where people specify their own cars. And I mean, I know, mate, obviously you had great skill in terms of speccing trucks, didn't you?
Of course, I was the best. I was the best at the time.
Goes without saying, Pete.
And anyone who's listening, they can't argue otherwise.
But there's no reason why. You can build your car online, isn't there? So to a certain extent, why can't you build a truck online?
Absolutely. That is an interesting prospect, isn't it? That's a very interesting prospect.
It is. I mean, okay, there's a lot of safety issues, isn't there, with trucks, obviously, to think about. And I bow to your knowledge in this. How you ever put together a truck, mate? I just wouldn't know where to start, mate.
It's a very specific skill set, and it takes a lot of time to get it right, Andy. And it's a special type of person that it takes to be able to get it right as well.
That's it. And you are special, Pete. Let's put it there.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You are
absolutely.
special.
Like the Jose Mourinho of transport.
But I mean, what we're saying, mate, is that if people are used to picking up their phone and getting stuff and doing stuff, then they're going to expect that right across everything that they touch and do, aren't they? Just naturally. That's quite understandable.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what does what do you think that finance is going to look like as new technology evolves for vehicles or heavy goods vehicles? At the moment, we can get a tractor unit for, I don't know, 120 grand, I suppose, for a decent one. If you wanted to buy a Scania, it might be quite a lot more, or if you wanted to buy a Iveco, it might be quite a lot less. I don't know really, but yeah, what are we looking at for sort of the gas vehicles? Are they like 25% more, or is it even more than that over and above a sort of standard diesel HGV? And then electric's going to be that much more.
Yeah, you're probably getting there, mate. You're getting bang right. I mean, obviously, when anything comes out new, obviously there's a kind of an introductory peak price, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, once you get serial production, that's what the manufacturers want. Once you get volume into market and serial production, then the price generally does come down, but it settles down to a point when, of course, then you get the next generation of either gas vehicles again, or if it's diesel, then the next emission level, whatever, and the price will go up again. So it just ever goes up. And I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about electrification, because electric stuff, although it's pretty niche kind of product at the moment, to be fair, it's more than a step up, mate. It's like another ladder. So like you need your triple extension ladder to get up to electric, mate. I tell you, it's next again. And I think I do understand how operators and manufacturers want to show green credentials, don't they?
Yeah.
And they might be thinking about it for their own reasons. They might be thinking, I want to do my bit for the planet. Or they might be saying, well, my customers are giving me grief because I'm operating diesel trucks, So there's a big, I can see a big, move to electrification. But because at the moment the price differential is so great, I think really the only answer with it is going to be, lease or contract hire. I mean, contract hire, as you know, mate, it just is lease. It's just got your services, your maintenance built in with it.
Yeah. Which they're going to want on, because obviously there's going to be so much that goes wrong. And this is, I know we're going to talk about finance, but it raises questions, doesn't it, around the future of the independent workshop?
Yep.
What does the independent or the larger operator have their own workshop? What's the future of that look like? And also, what does the future look like for the smaller family-run businesses who essentially may not have the assets or the capital to be able to finance or look at the level of finance needed for these vehicles? They're just sort of going along at the moment from a diesel point of view. Does it give competitive advantage to these bigger operators who are running much more volume on a much smaller margin? I don't know really. I think they look just as vulnerable, really. But yeah, sorry, I digress. Really, it was just sort of those are the questions that raises in my head.
No. You're right, mate. I mean, the point really about lease as opposed to purchase is that your entry point is a lot lower, isn't it? With HP, typically on a commercial vehicle, you have to put all of that up front. So that's 20% on your 120 grand tractor unit. 24 grand, that's a lot of money, mate, isn't it?
I remember the chasing round. Beginning of March for the new Regis, and like literally chasing that around the country.
Yeah. But with your lease, generally speaking, you only put one single month instalment down. So your actual entry point is quite low. So really, for your smaller SME, your smaller operator, it is accessible. This stuff will be accessible, but I think really probably only on a kind of contract hire and lease front. And I think it's right you mentioned about own workshop, Fred in the shed, as we used to call it on the bus and coach side when I worked there. This technology is going to way outstrip Fred in the shed, isn't it? So and in many respects it has now. You will need to. Well, I was going to say you'll need to take your vehicle into the manufacturer, dealer point. But actually, with the way things are with telematics, you won't actually need to take it in.
Well, no.
It's got the point. And if you've seen any of the latest marketing from, I'll use Volvo, but I'm sure they're all doing the same thing. Basically, the truck is telling the workshop, isn't it, what it's doing on a live basis, actual live basis, and saying, look, I've got a service coming up. I've got this wearing out, that wearing out. This isn't quite right. So, it's big shifts happening there, mate, too.
It is. It's frightening. It's frightening, isn't it?
Poor old Fred in the shed's not going to. He's not going to do any of that, is he?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a fascinating prospect, and one of my friends owns a car garage, and we were talking about electric, and there's a group of us, and one of them's an electrician, and he can't fit EV points quick enough in homes at the moment. He's literally like, flat out on EV points, and my car guy is literally going, it's ruining my business. Like, it's ruining my business, and it's like,
that's it. Yeah,
not there, isn't it?
Exactly. I've got a mate of mine who's exactly the same, mate. He's got a little garage down the road from me, and he said the nightmare for him actually was last year when the government extended the MOT.
Oh, what a farce!
It just, he said his business just stopped.
Yeah,
just nobody took the car from MOTs. They didn't need to, did they?
Yeah, no.
So it's been deferred for 6 months. So we'll just we'll bring it in.
That's been a total joke, though. Don't bring your vehicle for MOT. Take the extension, and now oh no, we've got too many vehicle tests later in the year. Bring them forward. What a game of cat and mouse. Happy days.
Absolutely. But
happy days. Fantastic.
Yeah, there you go, mate. So like I said, there's kind of the murmurings of change going on in financing, mate, and usage, and it's going to be an interesting few years coming up, I think.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I suppose just to sort of finish off, I know we sort of alluded to earlier that we'd sort of been previous colleagues, but what's the future looking like at the moment for Andy Page? What what's the relationship status looking like?
Well, officially it says it's complicated.
Oh, okay. That probably sounded a little bit. That probably sounded a little bit creepy, actually. I mean, from an employment point of view.
From an employment point of view, mate, she's got a nice lengthy list of stuff for me to do.
Okay.
So, I got a new motorbike coming. So that's I'm making changes in the garage at the moment. Make sure I've got the space for that.
Yeah, so, awesome. That's great. I guess just before I sort of finish off, is there a question that I've not thought to ask that I should have asked that is maybe begging? And if
no. We've basically covered the stuff that I thought we should cover, mate.
Fantastic.
So no, it's been good.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing all however many years of expertise, Andy. Just aiming that right back at you. All those many years of expertise in the finance sector, and particularly in the transport sector, for coming along and sharing that knowledge on an independent basis as well, which is fantastic for people to listen to. And I know you've got a profile on LinkedIn, and Andy's page is Andy Page at LinkedIn on LinkedIn. So do go and hunt him out. And I'm sure if you're a transport haulier and you want some independent support or anything like that from a financial point of view, I'm sure you'd be willing to give a few tips and pointers. Totally,
always welcome.
Obliged anyway, right? So thank you everyone for listening. Please do share it if you've got value from it. And we've had a few laughs along the way, so fantastic. It's been great having you, Andy. Thank you very much.
You too, Pete.
I really hope you loved today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.